I think I would have liked to have met and known Onesiphorus. Uh, we just get a snapshot. We talked about it last time and talked about him. And here in Second Timothy chapter 1, we're in, well, let's go back to verse 16 where Paul writes, "May the Lord show mercy to the household of Onesiphorus, because he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. On the contrary, when he was in Rome, he searched hard for me until he found me. May the Lord grant that he will find mercy from the Lord on that day." That's pretty good prayer. I think there are people who are praying that the Lord will have mercy on me. I'm the recipient of almost incalculable mercy from God, and I'm so grateful for it. But when I hope you have people in your life that when they come to your mind, you're praying a similar kind of prayer that God will grant them mercy. Um, well, there was a reason why Paul had this level of affection for Onesiphorus, and it was both because of how Onesiphorus had responded, and more than just responded, he had gone way out of his way to search for Paul while he was imprisoned in Rome until he found him. Would have been easy to give up. There was no such thing as red tape in the literal sense in century one, but oh my goodness, the concept of layer upon layer and dead end with dead end, and then finally finding a person who had some information, and until Onesiphorus, he was not a quitter. He kept looking until he found Paul. And when he found him, he refreshed him. That's a couple of things. Number one, I need people like that in my life. And God has been so good to me. One of his great mercies to me is that he has put those kinds of people in my life. And I'm so grateful for them. The second thing is, I want to be that kind of person. And we've talked about that already. I mean, we've thought quite a lot about it, actually. Just one summary thought. I'm never going to be that kind of person accidentally. Now, some people have, their nature is more that way. They're kind of how God has wired them is consistent with that kind of lifestyle. But even those people have to intentionally do these things to refresh others. And sometimes they do them so often and so consistently that it becomes second nature. But the rest of us requires thoughtful, even prayerful intention. And it requires one other thing. Let's see. There's an old kind of riddle. I can't even, it was so long ago that I heard it, I can't even remember when it was. But it's two birds were perched on a telephone line. One decided to fly off. How many birds were left on the wire? Well, the answer is two, because to decide to fly and to fly are not the same. We want to be intentional, and then we want to do it. Okay. May the Lord grant that he will find mercy from the Lord on that day. We briefly talked about what that day is. I think that would be the day of the Lord. Now, some people think there's going to be this a succession of events, and I honestly, I don't know. I have this feeling, I have this thought. It's almost a conviction. And nobody knows. Even Jesus said, I don't know. The angels don't know. Only the Father knows. I have this conviction that Jesus is going to return. And when he does, he'll bring everything under his control. And he will bring time to an end. And then, when time is eliminated, then there will be judgment. And Paul, I think, is referring to how, in whatever sequence, in whatever timeline, his idea of that day is not necessarily, and I think probably not, a 24-hour span of time. This is not a date on a calendar. This is a period of time. Okay, well, we'll go deeper into that, but no need. And then he finishes his thought about Onesiphorus to Timothy and says, you know very well in how many ways he helped me in Ephesus. Now, there's some interrelatedness here. Timothy was in Ephesus. Evidently, Onesiphorus was either a resident in Ephesus and a part of the church fellowship there, or he was some kind of itinerant guy, and he had spent time in Ephesus while Paul was there and been so helpful to him. Well, I don't think there's enough stuff on Onesiphorus for us to know what the case was, except that maybe this is, I'm not going to say the most important, but this is a very important piece of the life of Onesiphorus. Wherever he was refreshing others. This, to me, is maybe the one of the highest compliments that a person can receive. That wherever you show up, wherever you are, you're always helpful. You are a refreshment. You refresh, you restore, you help. I want to be that guy. But there are days when I can't say I was. I was all wrapped around the axle of my stuff. And here's the thing. There are going to be moments, there might even be seasons where our stuff is very thought-consuming. And it is not because we are evil people and selfish. Although, if that becomes our lifestyle where it's all only about us, that is selfish. But there are times when, due to health, medical, physical health, due to emotional health, due to difficult circumstances, our focus turns inward for us to deal with what's going on around us and in us, in my opinion, so that we can release it to God. But this is not a moment. Anyway, it hasn't ever been for me. This is a process. Well, okay. Even in those periods when I think I have to turn inward, I don't want to live there. There are times when, as I turn inward, in that season, one of the redemptive things about that time is that I can still look outward. And one of my almost daily prayers, pretty much daily, is, God, make me useful to you today. I got that idea when I studied the book of Philemon. Philemon had a slave, Onesimus. Sounds a little bit like Onesiphorus, but it's two different guys. Onesimus, who's the literal meaning of the name Onesiphorus. Oh, now I'm confusing myself. Onesimus is useful, but Onesimus had escaped. He was a slave of Philemon and had somehow escaped and run away, and encountered Paul as a runaway slave. And Paul writes back to Philemon to receive him as a brother who was previously unuseful, now is useful. I'm a horrible speller anyway, and spelling Greek names and Roman names I'm especially bad at. But in my prayer journals, I sometimes will pray, Lord, make me Onesimus today. Make me useful. I think that's a legitimate prayer for everybody. And it's not a dramatic prayer. See, I don't have to be like, I don't need to ride in a white Charger and solve people's issues. Although, if ever that's needful and I can do it, that would be, okay, I'm good with that. But more often, I find myself being useful in less dramatic ways. I want to challenge you that you think about Onesiphorus and Onesimus and consider that Onesiphorus was an embodiment of the idea of Onesimus. He was useful. Wherever he was useful. And sometimes it required a lot of effort. Hunting down Paul, searching for him. It's not like, oh, I looked for Paul, No. He searched for Paul until he found him. He was diligent, and he didn't give up. This guy. So, that's a little more dramatic, because Paul was in prison. That's kind of a dramatic thing. But even in Ephesus, where it wasn't so dramatic, Paul said, Timothy, you know, because you were there, you saw it, how so many times, in so many ways, Onesiphorus helped me in Ephesus. I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that when I show up, I don't have to be the Messiah. I don't have to be the fixer. That's not what Onesiphorus was not that. He was the guy that when he showed up, he helped. My challenge is maybe, like me, you ought to just show up and help. Okay, catching a break today because I'm done for today. I'll see you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.